All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Saving Lakes Through Engaged Communities, Success Stories from the Adirondacks. My name is Sean Kittle. I'm the Communications Manager with the Adirondack Park Invasive Plant Program, and I'm just going to kind of give a little introduction here and kick things off for us, and then we'll hear from our speakers. So thank you all for joining us this morning. All right, we have four speakers today. First, we have Kim Trombly and Kristina Hartzell from ADK Action, and then it'll be Charlie Asher from the Lake Pleasant-Sacandaga Association, and finally, Jay Fetterman from Friends of Moody Pond. And I should mention that there will be a little add-on to Jay's presentation from Brian Green. He's a PIPS program manager, and he's going to talk a little bit about the Friends of Moody Pond story map that was created last year. It's really nice. All right, so here's what we're looking at today. ADK Action is going to kick things off. They're going to talk about engaging a community, rallying volunteers, and reaching younger audiences. And then we're going to move on. So we'll have a little Q&A after that, and then we'll move on to Lake Pleasant-Sacandaga Association with how they've created a school program that teaches young people about lake ecology and invasive species. And then lastly, we'll have Jay with Friends of Moody Pond, and he's going to talk to us about how that organization launched a successful community engagement effort to raise money for eradicating Eurasian water milfoil from the pond. That's right down here, right down the road from me in Saranac Lake. So I've kind of seen this process happen over the past couple 2-3 years, and it's been really cool to watch. And then Brian Green's going to show you all a really nice story map that was created that kind of details the whole Friends of Moody Pond story and how they got this initiative going and all the steps that were taken. So we will have a little Q&A after each section. If they start to go kind of long, I'll cut it off, and then we'll have a big Q&A at the end for anything that's lingering. I ask everyone, please, please, please do not interrupt the speakers as they're talking. If you have a burning question and you don't want to forget it, you can put it in the chat, or if you're just not comfortable speaking out loud and you'd rather type the question into the chat, that would be great, and then we'll kind of systematically go through them at the end of each section. And if we only have a couple of questions and there's little time, you can just come off of mute and ask questions then. And that's all I have. So I'll kick it off to kick it over to ADK Action.
Hey, thank you. Let me just pull up my screen share here. Okay, can everyone see our screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I'm Kristina Hartzell, and I am the I'm the Communications and Operations Manager here at ADK Action. And this is my colleague, Kim.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kim Trombly. I'm the project manager here at ADK Action. So for those of you who don't know who we are a small community-based nonprofit here in the Adirondack Park. We pride ourselves on being innovators and catalysts, and we focus all of our projects on meeting unmet needs across the park. And we really focus on projects that help communities and the environment thrive together. So we work across a suite of projects, everything from food security to reducing road salt to increasing pollinator habitats, arts, compost, broadband housing. We do a little bit of everything. And today we're going to show you or share with you all some really great tangible best practices you can bring back to your own nonprofit to help make you a better and more engaged community partner.
One question that we often get is how on earth do you do so much across so many project areas when you have such a small staff? You are looking at a third of our staff right now. And the answer is community engagement for sure.
So if it makes everybody on this call feel better, I know we're all struggling to attract volunteers, to attract really engaged communities. And again, if it makes everyone feel better, these are national trends that have been happening since about the 1960s. But there are some really great things you can employ to kind of help buck these trends. As Kristina said, we do a lot with a little because we have such strong community partners. We partner with a lot of other local nonprofits, and we have a bunch of really engaged volunteers. So today we'll share some 5 best practices to help increase your volunteer and community engagement.
So although we're going to give you a bunch of different strategies, and they're all things that can be sort of adjusted to fit your needs and scaled to different sizes, if you remember just one thing from today, our overarching theme for all that we do is doing things with people, not at people. Your grandma may have always told you that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should do twice as much listening as you do speaking. So we try to live that in our work as we go. It is not always easy to work with people and take the needs of each community, but we really believe that local solutions usually are the best fit for local problems. So with our guiding principle for community engagement, especially, is doing things with people, not at people. So recommendation 1.
Yes, so our first recommendation, some tangible things you can change as part of your organization to help increase your volunteer and community engagement is the first step is to put your best face forward. And what we mean by this, by and large, the most limiting factor of nonprofits at any scale is the value of time. So we want to be very respectful of people's time. And the best way to start with that is to run great meetings. This is such an underutilized tactic, but it's so important. And so to run a great meeting, you need a great agenda. So we're going to share some really good tips on how to create a really actionable and helpful agenda. So as an example of what a good agenda looks like, this is an agenda from our recent Community Development Advisory Committee board. And the big highlights from this agenda is it really goes into detail on the what we are planning to talk about, when we're planning to talk about it, and why we're talking about the various topics that we're doing. And the really important reason to include the what, the when, and the why of an agenda is so that we're respecting people's times and avoiding meetings that could have been emails. I'm sure we've all been on those where you're like, wow, I could have just read this update in 20 minutes. And we also really highly and strongly encourage you all to send your meeting agendas and any read ahead materials out at least a week in advance of your meeting. Different people have different ways of thinking. I'm somebody who's really good on their feet. I could probably answer your question if you gave me about a 30-second notice, but some people really like to kind of percolate on ideas. They like to read through materials and have a really good, thoughtful feedback before they speak. So these agendas are really actionable, and that just kind of helps everybody feel more comfortable in the meeting. We always include time on our agenda as well. This really helps to mitigate people who are going to give an introduction and spend 15 minutes talking about their new dog. So if you put on the agenda that our introduction is really only supposed to take 10 minutes, it helps everyone frame their brain on how long they should be providing feedback. And again, like all of these questions about what types of information we're asking for our various agenda items, it lets people think ahead of time and bring their most concise thoughts to the meeting. For our second recommendation, I'll turn it over to Kristina.
Great. So as you can tell from the fact that I'm wearing one of our Pollinator Project t-shirts, I think that branding is an incredibly important tool for community engagement. This helps people identify with your cause and make it part of their personality. I'm sure we've all seen those like Lake George outline stickers that people put on their cars. And when someone puts a sticker on their car, they're saying like, this is part of who I am. If they wear a shirt that has a message that supports what you do, that is them saying like, this is so important to me, that is part of who I am. So when it is applicable, we love to introduce shirts, stickers. We have launched a couple of different Don't Be Salty campaigns, Don't Be Salty ADK, and currently launching our Don't Be Salty Lake Champlain. And you can see the stickers from our Don't Be Salty Lake Champlain campaign up there, including little Save Champy stickers. And we've gotten some really great positive feedback from these, but it has to be good to get on the car, to get on the water bottle, even to get on the notebook usually. It has to be like a high quality sticker and have some messaging, not just your logo usually, because none of us have such strong brand recognition that people want. We're not Nike, You know, people aren't just wearing just our logo places. If you can add some more context to your branding materials, some simple message that says what it is about, it has a higher adoption rate. And then my other trick for creating identity is engaging youth, and through youth, their parents. Almost any time that we table somewhere, we try to bring along some coloring sheets or some sort of youth activity that correlates. So here you can see a painting activity, My Adirondack Fish, a coloring activity, Champy Loves Freshwater, My Adirondack Butterfly. And I find that this really helps bring people over to your table. How many times have you been at an event with a table full of things and people walk by and you make eye contact and they kind of scurry away? But if their kid is there drawing something, you now have a captive audience to say, hey, have you heard about ADK Action? Do you know anything about our road salt work? Do you know anything about our pollinator conservation? Do you know about our food programs? Do you know anyone that needs this kind of assistance? And it really is a natural conversation starter. And also, the center picture is my own daughter, and I can say, as a parent, it's so exciting when there's something that someone is offering to occupy her at an event, so it will draw us right in. It's a great way to engage younger families. And that also brings us to recommendation 3. Make engagement accessible and fun. So many of us in the Adirondacks, we're always looking to get that next generation of involvement, to get the younger families around, you know, make sure that we have a really diverse group of people that are involved in what we are doing. So try to make that as easy and accessible as possible. If you can't offer meetings after work hours, try to at least offer hybrid meetings so that people who are busy working all day and have families at night can participate if they're able to. If you're having an in-person thing, welcome kids and make it known that it's okay for kids to come. There's a great, another use to pull out all of those coloring sheets and have a table. And that way people know that they can come and get involved. The other thing is making it really meaningful. If you have volunteers, we always try to offer a 5-star volunteer experience. I always say that volunteers are not unpaid. Volunteers are paid in good feelings, and it is on us to like write that paycheck of good feelings. So part of that comes back to Kim's point of making sure that people have all the information they need in advance. When you're offering a volunteer experience, we really need to make sure volunteers have all the information, the tools, the communication in advance that they need to make sure that they have a great time volunteering and find meaning in what they are doing. So the other point on getting volunteers involved is offer a full menu of ways for people to engage. Everything from appetizers to desserts, full course, small plates. This can be everything as simple as signing up for your newsletter, sharing a social media post, volunteering at an event, all the way up to joining a board of directors as a way to volunteer. And hopefully you're offering something that everyone can get involved with, and then they might perhaps grow their involvement later on.
The next thing we highly recommend you guys doing as a nonprofit is always evaluating and prioritizing your efforts. Internally, we call this, is the juice worth the squeeze? It's very easy as a nonprofit to spread yourself way too thin. And so this is me giving you all permission to just say no to projects that are not aligned with exactly what you want to do as an organization, or projects that are way beyond your skills and expertise, or are going to take way too many resources, either personnel or money. Some things to help increase your impact as an organization while remaining lean is to consider partnerships. Like we talked about earlier today, one of the greatest strengths and the reason we're able to make such large impacts as ADK Action with such lean staff resources is because of the thoughtful partnerships that we brought into our projects. But partnerships really can go both ways. It can be a real help to your project if both organizations' missions and what they're getting out of the project align, but it also can detract from the project too. So, you know, if if missions are close but not quite perfectly aligned, if both organizations are very busy and don't have the capacity for a project, things can quickly get muddled in messaging, in who does what. So just really, partnerships can be fantastic, but they could also be a hindrance. So just be a little, thoughtful on how you bring partners into your work. And I think one of the greatest tools you can use as an organization is something called the effort impact matrix. There's a ton of different frameworks for this. You can Google search effort impact matrix. This one here on this slide is very simple. They can get very complex, but it's a really great way to organize your thoughts around projects. So the different quadrants in this matrix are high impact, high effort projects. So things that are going to require a lot of staff time, a lot of money to implement, like think a big pollinator festival that we do here at ADK Action, lots of staff time, lots of money, but huge impact. We reach, 1,000 people during the day. We raise about 20 grand for our organization. High impact, high reward, high effort. There's the other quadrant that's high impact and low effort. We'll talk about that next with our thank you notes. And then there's also things that are low effort, low impact. These are things you can fill in as you have time, but they're not maybe mission critical to your organization. Things like, doing a press release after your events. These are low impact, depending on the pickup can sometimes be, they're low effort, but sometimes can be low impact, depending on how they get picked up by the media. But they also could be low effort and high impact projects, kind of depending on how things go. And then there's this last quadrant where it's high effort and very low impact. So I think these are type things, typically legacy projects sometimes fall into this, where you've had a really large scale event that you hosted for many years, and it is no longer really serving its purpose. So this is also my permission to you all to find a thoughtful way to sunset these programs that are causing a lot of resource drain and really no longer having the impact that they used to have. So just always constantly evaluating your projects, constantly looking at if the juice is worth the squeeze. And then lastly, our recommendation that I kind of alluded to in the last slide is the power of gratitude. You can do nothing without saying thank you to your participants. And we highly recommend doing this in the form of a handwritten thank you note. Please don't take yourself off mute, but think in your own heads, everyone on this call, when was the last time you received a thoughtful handwritten thank you note? It's probably been a long time, if ever. And these don't have to be lengthy, they don't have to be hard, but we do really recommend writing them out by hand and maybe following this simple framework. So we kind of write our thank you notes by saying, hello, volunteer name. Thank you so much for your help at XYZ event. So at our pollinator sale. We really appreciate the way you did XYZ thing. So we really appreciate the way you volunteered to help paint butterflies with kids. And because of your efforts, I saw that this impact happened. So in the case of the Pollinator Festival, I saw that 10 kids walked away with giant smiles on their faces. You could tell that it really made their day by the fact that you sat and painted butterflies with them. And then you just wrap up with again, reiterating your thanks. So thank you so much. And then the next step ask of, we really hope we can count on you for next year. So these are really simple, 3-4 sentences. It's going to take you maybe 2 minutes to write this thank you note. But that impact of that 2 minutes and the stamp and the 50-cent card is going to have huge impacts on your volunteer retention going forward. Always thank volunteers, ask them for something, and then thank them profusely again afterwards.
Okay, so those were our 5 recommendations. But looking ahead, it's really that engagement is a journey. It's not a one-time effort, even though these were a lot of one-time strategies. It really is a relationship that you are building, and that goes back to our doing things with people, not at them. It is that back and forth and that long-term relationship that you are building.
And we really want to emphasize again, like our 5 really quite simple recommendations. But we always just encourage everyone to make sure your volunteer and community engagement efforts are fun. It's easy for people to get involved. People can get involved at different types of scale. You always want to make sure that you're evaluating and adapting your programs, making sure that you're respecting people's time through great communication, through great agendas, through thoughtful and productive meetings, and always to show gratitude to anyone who is involved in your organization at any scale.
Great. So thank you very much. And now I believe we have some time for questions, at least according to our clock.
Yes, that is correct. And thank you both for being here. We really appreciate it. I don't see any questions in the chat. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask?
Yeah, I do. This is Bob Hauserman from Paradox Lake. One of the issues that we face is that a significant portion of our membership are not year-round residents. And so there's some people who are very connected, so either live year-round or are very, very connected to what goes on at the lake and our association. There's other people who want to make sure our organization does everything, but really isn't around much, or their allocation of time says they don't really want to get involved. And I'm just wondering if you run into that in other organizations that you work with, and kind of what things you might recommend to try to increase the engagement amongst a non-resident, less committed population.
Yeah. Well, we have so many members that are seasonal residents that sometimes we get to the end of the summer and we think like, oh my God, we get a rest now. And then it turns out that we don't. But I would say that most of our seasonal residents, we engage them more in when they are present. We offer like one-off volunteer opportunities, or engage them while they are here, and then try to continue keeping them in the loop through our newsletter and individual correspondence during their off season, to try to remind them that this is year-round work. Is there anything you would add, Kim?
Yeah, so certainly echoing what Kristina said, offering many different ways and scales for people to be involved in your organization is a great starting point. And then also, I think what I talked about earlier about evaluating what your organization has the capacity for and not. Volunteers are fantastic. Sometimes they bring ideas to the table that just might not be feasible for your organization's scale or the other projects you have going on. So I've always found that if you're getting a lot of feedback of ideas that are just slightly beyond your capacity, people are really understanding with openness and transparency. Hey, we aren't able to do that project right now for XYZ reason, but we'll certainly consider it in the future, or we would love your engagement in this way so we can make that project happen. So giving people the rationale behind why you might pass on a project, and or this is what we'll need from you in order to make that project successful. I've always found that to be a fairly effective strategy that people are fairly understanding about.
I would say for lakes, it would be really great to find a way to let them know what's happening at the lake in the seasons that they aren't there, to help like reinforce that identity. And also because if you love a place in the summer, you kind of want to know like, oh, look, it froze over on this date. Like, that's so interesting. Oh, here's a video of like an otter playing around, and I never see that, you know, I'm not there in the winter. It's like hearing from a relative that you don't see often, to hear from your lake. Now,
Okay, I don't see any more questions in the chat. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to ask? I'm kind of curious. You know, APIP, we do a lot of webinars, we do a lot of events, tabling, and things like that, where we're not just passing along information, but we're really asking people to do things. You know, it's important that people are educated on invasive species and that they know how to prevent them from spreading, but we want them to do those things, you know, to take that next step to actually prevent invasive species from spreading, or to go out and monitor for invasive species. So I'm just kind of curious, do you have any ways that you use to kind of follow up with people, like whether they're webinar participants or at an event, to know that they're doing the thing that you're asking them to do.
Yeah, we ask people to do a lot of different things.
I figured you have action in your name, you know?
Yeah. I think we always try to make sure that we get people to subscribe to our newsletter when they offer to do something, or when we give them advice for what to do. If we've given them anything specific, we like to follow up when people are interested, for example, in creating more backyard pollinator habitat. I try to put their name on a list so that they know when our annual native plant sale launched. It just launched at adkaction.org/plant sale. And so that we can follow up with them later and give them next steps. So for example, if someone requests free seeds from us, we have a free wildflower queen program. Their name goes on a list, and then we let them know about the pollinator plant sale, which might be of their interest later on. And then we also tag them to follow up later about here's a guide for taking care of your pollinator habitat in the fall. Make sure that you're not raking up all your leaves, or tearing out your garden, because overwintering bees can be sleeping in the stems of your grasses. We try to give them timely touch points throughout the year to continue that conversation and help them grow their own pollinator stewardship as they proceed.
And I think too, much like very actionable agendas, if you give people the specific ask, so if you're having a webinar and you want people to, help monitor for invasive species, give them the specific request of what you would like them to do. So instead of saying like, I would, please monitor for the plants, or go out and pull them, or, give them the one thing that you're really want their help with, and then follow up with that specific task. So I would like you to send, or to go and monitor for this invasive plant in May and send me the report back by the end of May. So specific, actionable time bounds, I think really goes a long way with helping clarify for your volunteers what it is specifically you're looking for them to do, and then gives you a good time frame to follow back up if they haven't completed the task that you've asked them to do.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Yeah. I think follow-up is really important just for everybody on here. You will get a follow-up email after this with a link to the video once it's uploaded to YouTube, and some more information will be in there. We do have a question. Kathy would like to ask a question. Kathy, are you
Yeah,
there?
I'm sorry. Yes. Can you hear me? I unmute, but then I kept getting muted, but that's okay. My question, and I probably don't have time for this really, but our biggest problem, I'm in a community on Lake George, and we have many different opinions for how to protect our community area. And that is our most difficult obstacle is, example, we have been losing a lot of trees on our community property to storms, to disease, dying. And most people now have these wonderful views and they don't want to replant. And we have done education. We have done all this to give we are educating, and we have a board, and we keep hitting roadblock after roadblock. And I don't know, is there any other thing than to keep educating?
So I think, like
Yeah.
Kristina talked about, sometimes it's most important to listen first, and then
Yeah.
make recommendations from the feedback that people are giving you. And potentially even adapting what your previous thoughts were once you get that community feedback. I've always found that people don't like being educated, they like being listened to. So if you're hearing feedback from your community members that says, hey, we actually love these new viewscapes that we're getting from the fact that the trees have blown down, you could use that feedback and then perhaps adapt what you were planning to do. So instead of maybe tall growing trees, can you get the same riparian effects with lower bushes. So you're maintaining the view shed while, while still holding our banks strong with various different kinds of like riparian buffers. That's completely out of context. I don't know if that resonates at all, but that's kind of my recommendation, is really to hear what people are saying and then respond to what they're saying instead of approaching it from kind of top-down education. We found that.
No, that's good. I mean, it's compromise, I guess, is compromise.
Yeah. We also a lot talk about, especially with these kind of relationships, the idea of consent over consensus. So the difference kind of between those two words is consent means that while you might disagree with the outcome, you're okay with it. Versus consensus, where you're trying to get everybody in the room to have the same opinion. If we have kind of contentious issues, sometimes the best path forward is to just get everybody on the same, I'm not going to oppose this action, like get consensus or consent that way instead of trying to get everybody on the exact same messaging. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I've always called that meeting people where they're at. Sometimes, like you said, it's better to listen than to talk to, right?
Yes.
So I think we should probably wrap up this portion. If anybody has any more questions for Kim and Kristina, we can save them for the end. Feel free to type them in the chat if something comes to you and you don't want to forget it. And next, we're going to move on to Charlie.
Give me a second here. Wait, do this. Share.
A few steps to making all this come together.
Okay, here we go.
All right, and don't forget to hit the slideshow, Charlie.
I'm doing that right now.
Cool. Sorry.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Charlie Asher. I'm representing the Lake Pleasant-Sacandaga Association, located in the town of Lake Pleasant and village of Speculator, New York. First, let me start off by explaining who I am and why I'm here. I was president of LPSA from 2010 to 2013. I've been a board member from 2008 to 2024. And the primary purpose of me being here today is the fact that I have been the education program coordinator since its inception in 2011, right up through 2024. I want to thank Brian Green and Sean Kittle for this chance to discuss a program topic which is very, very near and dear to my heart because I started it and I've been sticking with it all this time. LPSA as an organization was originally formed in 1953. So we are one of the older lake associations in New York. The primary purpose of LPSA was to protect our lakes and natural resources. We cover the town of Lake Pleasant, as I mentioned, and the village of Speculator. In that jurisdiction, we have 5 good-sized lakes. We're not concerned about ponds. They are Lake Pleasant, Sacandaga Lake, Oxbow Lake, Whitaker Lake, and Erie Lake. We use a multifaceted approach. Number one is the prevention of invasives being introduced into our lakes. Public education is a very, very important point. And the ladies from ADK Action mentioned the idea of engaging youth and parents. Again, public education, that's where it comes in. So thank you, ladies, for mentioning that topic, because that's why I'm discussing this program. And the last thing is community involvement, which we have an ongoing program trying to make sure that it's not just us doing these various projects. We want the community to see us, hear us, understand us, and participate with us. The school program is one of our flagships. We also have some other very interesting programs. We have a lakeshore monitoring program. This is run by one of our board members. It's a group of volunteers that live on the various 5 lakes within our jurisdiction. Each volunteer is assigned a particular section of the shoreline. So we have basically the shoreline of every lake totally assigned to volunteers who patrol these shoreline districts, usually in August, because that's when the weeds seem to be growing and the water level drops a little bit. and they patrol it in August, looking for any unusual growth or expansion of existing weeds. Anything that's questionable, they pull samples and bring it to our in-house personnel who analyze it. And so far, knock on wood, they've all been non-invasive, but we keep an eye on that. We also have run a boat lake stewards program, which we started before DEC and AWI implemented their programs. We trained our own lake stewards. We had a retired professor from Union College who did the original training of these people. We paid for their time in conjunction with the town of Lake Pleasant. We split the cost 50-50 with the town, and they manned a ramp at Moffitt's Beach campsite, which was a DEC campsite, and always had a lot of people coming in and out every year. LPSA also was instrumental in getting one of, if not one of the first local laws in New York State, making it actually illegal to launch a boat with aquatic invasives on it into our lakes. And lastly, when DEC announced a grant program several years ago, we put several applications together and received 2 separate grants to cover the cost of lake stewards manning our various ramps, and also the purchase of boat wash stations. In order to make our programs successful, we need to coordinate with various partners. And again, this kind of is an offshoot of what ADK Action was talking about. We partner with the town of Lake Pleasant, obviously, the Village of Speculator, Camp of the Woods, which is a Christian camp on Lake Pleasant, which attracts people from all over the country. I've been getting a list of the boats that were launched on Camp of the Woods, and they are legitimately from as far south as Georgia or Florida and as far west as Ohio. So when you talk about bringing in invasives, it's very important to have Camp of the Woods part of our program, and they have bought into the program tremendously. We work with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department because their boats go to all the various lakes within Hamilton County. Obviously, we work with the Lake Pleasant School. One of our another important partners is Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation District, who we work with our program for the lower grades in the school. And lastly, of course, it's APIPP, AWI, and DEC. We also have been operating a multi-year sampling and testing program using CSLAP, which is the Citizen Statewide Lake Assessment Program, where we have monitored the lake water chemistry in Sacandaga Lake and Lake Pleasant. So we have a multi-year ongoing data collection program, so we can, if anything starts to change, we can spot it right then and there. And lastly, our board of directors is actively working on the formulation of a lake management plan, which would subsequently be the basis for future grant applications. Okay, now to get to the subject of why Brian and Sean asked me to talk today. The Lake Pleasant School Program. This program was initiated back when I was president in 2011. And I met with the school principal and superintendent to present the concept. With their permission to progress the program, I subsequently met with the English, Science, and Technology teachers to initiate the program. The first year in 2011, it was strictly an essay contest for grades 7, 8, and 9. In 2012, as per the suggestion of the teachers, which again, partnership, their suggestions obviously are very, very important. They suggested that we change the format into a research project that is a required component of the school curriculum for every student in those 3 grades. The annual topics are chosen by LPSA. Year 1 would be aquatic invasives, year 2 would be terrestrial invasives, and year 3, we varied the topic. It was acid rain one year, it was pollution and everything else. One of the important aspects of the research, not only did we want the kids to look at the examples of the invasives, but one of the things we talked about and stressed was they, in their presentation, they had to discuss the effects of the introduction of these invasives into our lakes on the local economy, which obviously it's a very tourist, seasonal economy. based on people coming up for the summer, using our lakes, our waterways, our hiking paths. And so we stress that in the presentations. The presentations that the kids put together are absolutely amazing. The original thinking is phenomenal. There always now are a multimedia presentation, which they present to their fellow students and teachers before LPSA even gets involved. They use animation, they use avatars. One student actually wrote and played an original song and sang it with his guitar. They do live interviews. People have brought boats in. It's just every year it's something different pops up. The teachers then choose the top 5 to 7 presentations, where those 5 to 7 top presenters then meet in front of a review committee of LPSA representatives to present to us. The review committee then chooses the winners based on first place, second place, third place, and nobody can lose, so we make an honorable mention. The prizes and the winners are announced at the annual school awards ceremony, which is conducted at the end of the year. Again, community involvement at this award ceremony. Parents, local officials, students, and teachers are all in attendance. The winners receive a framed certificate from LPSA, and the first place gets a $250 gift card. Second place gets a $150 gift card. Third place gets $50 gift card, and honorable mention gets $25. The response of the students during this award ceremony is absolutely heartwarming, because they cheer for their fellow classmates that are winning, and we get down to announcing the first place. The place usually goes absolutely nuts, which is awesome. In addition to the actual presentations and research that the kids do, each year we schedule and fund a trip for grades 7, 8, and 9 to coincide with that year's topics. When we do aquatic invasives, we contract to go down and utilize the Lake George Association floating classroom and their streamhead trip. When we do terrestrial invasives, we have brought them up to the Wild Center, who have worked with us very closely to coordinate a program based on what our topics of the year were. And lastly, when we did the acid rain pollution, Paul Smith College came down with their boat and with a group of about 7 to 8 people, and put a day-long program at the Village Park and Pavilion. One thing was very interesting is when Paul Smith College did come down and we went out on their boat on Lake Pleasant. In fact, I was in the boat at the time, and we were collecting water samples. It was the first time, unfortunately, spiny water flea eggs were found in Lake Pleasant. Not a happy discovery, but it was interesting that that was the first time it was ever found. Of course, over the years, everything changes. Nothing ever stays the same. The 9th grade ended up being moved from Lake Pleasant School to different schools, so the program now only involves grades 7 and 8. We subsequently, therefore, obviously brought it down to a 2-year rotating program for aquatic invasives and then terrestrial invasives. In 2022, the program was expanded to include grades 4 through 6. We wanted to start to broach the subject of the importance of our lakes, the importance of invasives to the younger generation. They were not ready to do research projects yet, but we worked with the Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation District on a program that zeroed in on erosion, prevention of erosion, the effects of erosion, and remediation, where the kids went on like a day-long walking trip around town to see some of the areas where erosion has been a problem, especially after the Halloween storm, which we all know wiped out a lot of shorelines throughout the Adirondacks. The kids learned about planting trees along shorelines to stop erosion, and also some retaining structures, whether it be stones, pre-made concrete, things like that. So by involving the lower grades, when they get to grades 7 and 8, they've already heard about this topic and have some idea of what it's about. anything else, and again, Adirondack ADK Action mentioned, you've got to be able to analyze what you're doing and how successful it is. And looking at the program over these years, the knowledge spread to the younger generation has been wonderful, but it also has spread to their parents, because the kids obviously practice their presentations in front of their parents. So the parents are learning as much as the kids are. Last year, one of our students, in fact, the one who came in with the first place prize, in her presentation identified 3 examples of terrestrial invasives in our town, none of which any of us knew of, which were subsequently taken care of by the Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation District. Several years ago, giant hogweed was identified by one of the fathers of a student who was studying terrestrial invasives. He had never heard of giant hogweed prior to his child working on the program. The father worked for the highway department, and when he saw the giant hogweed, he stopped work in the area, didn't want anybody to get burnt by the hogweed, and the work was stopped until luckily it was later confirmed that it was a look-alike, which is very difficult to tell the difference between the real thing and the look-alike. In addition, several of our students that went through our program went on to become lake stewards, either working directly for LPSA and the town of Lake Pleasant or working for AWI. One winner, in fact, when I saw her at the our Lions Club scholarship dinner, told me that in her freshman year of college, she had to take an elective, and the one she picked was one on invasive plants. And the only reason she took it is because of what she learned during our local school program. And in fact, she informed me that at the time, her plans were to become an environmental lawyer. Again, obviously, the program had a tremendous effect on her. And I can also say I continually run into various parents and students throughout the town, throughout the village, whether it be getting gas or at the grocery store, whatever. And they always mention how much they appreciate the program. And so many times they've told me what their child used the gift card for, things like buying themselves a bicycle, buying themselves a electric fishing motor, and how proud they were that they were able to purchase those things. Basically, I don't think we've ever done anything that could increase public awareness any more than this program has done. Got some pictures for you, because pictures are worth 1,000 words. This is aboard the Lake George Association floating classroom. The gentleman in the red jacket was our instructor of the day. He was a retired science teacher, absolutely wonderful instructor. He is analyzing water samples taken from the lake with microscopes, which are on board. Subsequently, the kids then make up their own slides, and they break down into smaller groups on board and analyze what's on their slides through the microscopes. If you'll look, there's not a single student daydreaming or just shutting down. They're all paying very strict attention to what he's describing there. After we got done with the floating classroom in the morning, we had a bag lunch in the park, and then we went up to the stream head, one of the various streams which make their way down and flow into Lake George. There we did more collection of water samples where we could identify various organisms, some of them almost microscopic, some of them available to the naked eye. But again, the concentration of the kids was absolutely phenomenal. This was a picture of the floating classroom itself. This was from our trip to the Wild Center in Tupper Lake. This was their floating Earth globe, which they use to show various things. They can show climate patterns throughout the world. They can show migration patterns both on land or in the oceans. And it's an awesome tool, and obviously it definitely grabs the kids' attention and holds it for the whole time we were there. During our walk through the grounds of the Wild Center, their instructors spent a great amount of time talking about terrestrial invasives, which they were nice enough to modify their program to coincide with that year's topics. And they were actually pointing out various invasive plants throughout the grounds of the Wild Center, so the kids could see the effect of it and how they take over various areas. But again, kids are kids. We have to have some fun. So when we went through the Skywalk, one of the favorite attractions of the Skywalk is the giant spider web. And these are all the kids laying down in the spider web, the stereotypical picture of the kids laying there. There also is a giant replica of a eagle's nest, which the kids love being in, and they go through various bridges to towers and things like that. It was just an awesome day. Lastly, when Paul Smith College came down, this is the group I was with going out on their boat on the lake of where our house is located, collecting water samples. And again, this was the time when the eggs were found from spiny water fleas for the first time. Not a happy discovery, but the truth hurts sometimes. Also, while we split into groups, this was at the village park and the pavilion. This was a diorama that the Paul Smith College had made up just for us that year. They've been using it ever since, which shows how pollutants work their way down from various places down into our lakes. Pollutants come from golf courses, farms, roadways, things like that. And this diorama really brought it home as far as how things like that work their way into the lakes. And lastly, this is a picture of last year's contest winners. That's our vice president of LPSA on the left, Rich Armstrong. I'm standing on the right. And these are the people, the kids holding up their certificates they got from us, and the gift cards are in the back. Again, the response of the student body was absolutely wonderful. The cheering was so loud, it was crazy. And that is the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. We have two questions here that are pretty much the same. So let me see which one's a little more succinct here. So Bob and Everett were both wondering, what are the penalties for launching a boat with invasives on it? Who enforces the law, and how frequently are enforcement actions taken?
Okay, the way it was originally set up is the sheriff's department would issue a summons, kind of like a ticket, and the fine, if I remember correctly, I think it was $150. The most important thing is it gave some real teeth to the need to inspect boats, and boats that are found with invasives on it are asked to go to our boat wash station and get themselves cleaned off. We've had people come from where they got rejected at Lake George. They drive all the way from Lake George to Lake Pleasant, which is an hour without towing a boat with you, and then try to launch in our lake, and several of them have been turned away. And again, just having the availability of saying it is against the law, this is not just a local thing, just puts a little weight behind that comment.
Do you, you might not know this, but do you feel like you have to turn away quite a few boats every summer? I'm just kind of curious how many are trying to enter the water body with invasive species.
From the reports when I was active in the boat ramp steward program, each year I would say there's probably, we're very lucky, there's only usually I'd say less than 10 a year with actual invasives on them. The number that, when in doubt, go get washed, that's the thinking that's used normally. Like Camp of the Woods alone, they get over 100 boats a summer that come in from all over the country. And originally they did no inspections whatsoever. They have since so bought into the program, they have sent their waterfront people to our training program, and we coordinated with AWI. So now when they inspect their own boats, their data goes into the statewide database through AWI and APIPP. So they're really part of the program. In fact, the one time I went down to launch my own boat early in the season, I saw their correct craft coming in, flying in to the dock, and I said to my buddy, I said, "Watch this." And sure enough, the guy jumped out of the boat, didn't even bother tying it up, and ran over and you can't launch. We got to look at you. I said, thank you. I was totally agreeable. And once he realized who I was and what, then we were good. But just this is how they so bought into. The director of Camp of the Woods has even put a gate by their ramp, which they lock up when there's nobody manning the ramp down there. So they really have been a tremendous partner, and I make sure to thank them every year.
Like those partners, right?
Yeah,
And when
yeah.
you mention it's like less than 10 get turned away, that sounds like, wow, it's only less than 10, but it only takes one to get in there
It only takes one.
right?
That's what
So
we
that's
say. It only takes
yeah.
one. I mean, we've had last year, I think we had our first kayak with invasives inside the kayak. We've had plenty of PWCs that were real problems. And the boats are more easier to identify because if something is on the outside, you can see it a little better. But we've had them with zebra mussels, we've had them with Asian clams. I mean, you name it, we've had a little bit of everything.
Cool. So I think we have time maybe for one or two more questions here, and we'll save the rest for the end. So this question is, what a great program. Can you tell us how you fund the floating classroom, prizes, trips, and other program expenses? And there is a
Okay.
follow-up to that too about liability. How do you
Okay.
handle liability?
Well, originally, when I first became president of LPSA, we had a scholarship program, which we had money in the budget every year for a scholarship. And the idea being, again, we were only dealing with, the young generation. I mean, they weren't in college at that point, of people that might be going into something environmentally involved for future education. The first year we had 0 applicants for the scholarship. The second year we had 1 applicant who really, the qualifications were extremely questionable. I'm being kind now. But because we didn't want to have 2 years in a row without presenting the scholarship, we did award it. So when I became president in 2011, I broached the subject of how about we take that money we had scheduled for the scholarship and morph that into a program where we could spread the benefits around more kids between the prizes and then the cost of the trip. That's how we fund it with the money we originally had for the scholarship. We've had to boost it a little bit, but it's an annual part of our budget for LPSA. Liability wise, the school gets $1 million policy, a rider that they put the Lake George Association as one of the listed organizations on it. That the Lake George Association requires that, and the school has no problem doing it, and that's the way we do it. The school provides the school bus to bring the kids down and drive them back. We pay for the Lake George Association program. We played for the Tupper Lake program. We did pay for Paul Smith's, but now we've eliminated the 3rd year, obviously. So that's that.
And actually, there is just one more. Maybe we can answer it
Sure.
quickly. How is bilge water checked in boats?
Well, that's very interesting. And I get a real good handle on this because my son has worked at the marina on Lake Pleasant for, 16 years now? He started when he was 16. Well, I'm wrong, 18 years. He's 34 now. And so I have met with him and the other boys that work there, and they do inspect the boats. What LPSA does is we fund one of our lake stewards to man the marina on the weekends because it gets too busy for the staff to have time to check every boat coming in. But they're told to have the people pump out the bilge before they're launched and pump it out away from the lake so nothing flows down into the lake. If it's an area where somebody can actually look down in the bilge and see if anything's in there, they actually look down in that.
Great. Thank you, Charlie. All right, so Jay, you are up next. Jay's going to talk about Friends of Moody Pond initiative to get your Asian water milfoil out of Moody Pond. And real quick, I do want to mention Mary asked a question about sending out water samples for Lake George. Brian has answered that question in the chat. So Mary, if you could just kind of check that out. And if you have any more questions, let Brian know. And Brian, thanks for doing that.
This is our view, including the publicity for the supporters with Mount Baker in the background and Moody Pond. And off to the left, you see the one dwelling that's actually on the pond. So Moody Pond is a less than 25 acre, irregularly shaped body of water, 7/10 of a mile from downtown Saranac Lake. And there's a road that rims the pond with approximately 25 residences on the side of the road, not on the pond, with only, as I mentioned, one house on the pond. So our situation is very different from LPSA's. It's a small body of water. It has a great deal of peripheral use by the town and the community, where people come and jog, walk, rollerblade, teach their kids to ride bikes. People with disabilities access it with wheelchairs. So there's tremendous activity around the pond, but actually not a great deal of activity on or in the pond. We get occasional fishermen. The people who paddle on the pond are almost exclusively the residents. And there are the odd swimmers, self-included. So this is very different from most lakes. The history of the pond goes back 4 billion years when the bedrock was formed. And then the actual topography was formed with the recession of the glaciers about 12,000 years ago. There's evidence of native populations in the area dating shortly from then. And the first Euro-American to come to Saranac Lake was none other than Jacob Smith Moody, who took it upon himself to name the pond. Prior to that, the natives referred to it as Pine Pond. The road to the pond there was evidence that initially in 1902, and then it was completed around the pond in 1955. So that's relatively recent. The unique feature being the community's access, which has been both a plus and a minus, more a plus than a minus. So let's talk a little about the milfoil. Let's see, why don't you show the second slide, please? Is it up? Hello?
Yes, it's up. Yes.
Okay, see, I can't see. I'm not seeing what you're seeing, I guess. I don't know what's happened here.
You might have to click on find where the Zoom program is and like have the Zoom program on displaying on your computer. You should be able to see it. We're seeing a lot of smiling faces in a house right now in grassroots action.
See, I've gotten out of the Zoom. I don't know how to get back in. It's not allowing me. Well, this is quite a problem because I can't see the screen.
Is it open in your browser? Can whatever browser you're using should have Zoom in it, or there might be a Zoom icon at the bottom of your computer on your screen there that you can click on.
Oh. I'm really sorry.
If you can't see the Zoom, you could try opening the PowerPoint on your computer and just follow along.
Okay, can,
So we can see the grassroots action slide.
okay, so I see that now. All right.
Okay.
Can you go back a couple? All right, second slide. Oh, that's out of order. All right, I'll just go from here. This is the key group of people, the officers and the board. Why don't you go to the next slide? Okay, so this is showing the divers doing surface spotting. Next slide. All right, so this was the initial assessment of the milfoil from 2019 after a couple of residents on the pond thought that they found milfoil and did have APIP positively identify it. So then it was decided that we needed to have a more precise and rigorous estimate of the involvement. And this was what was come up with. The red showing the densest areas and then the lighter colors of pink and orange less intense. So it was estimated that 15% of the pond was involved with Eurasian water milfoil. Next slide. So we organized Friends of Moody Pond. Prior to the discovery of milfoil, there was no organization around the pond. But it was felt that without a robust organization, we would never be able to get this under control. We're fortunate in having a number of talented and dedicated people, and we quickly organized in 2019 after the milfoil was discovered. We had help from a former retired APA attorney drawing up bylaws, and we decided that the key thing we had to do was raise money, come up with a plan, educate ourselves, educate the public, and get to work. So we had input from a number of organizations around the area, namely APIP and the Adirondack Watershed Institute out at Paul Smith's. We had presentations with Dan Kelting, who was the head of the AWI then, and Guy Middleton from the Upper Saranac Foundation. We considered chemical treatment, which was quickly rejected because of the possible deleterious long-term effects, and then considered mats and hand harvesting. If we used mats, we would have had to get permission from the DEC. Therefore, we decided to go strictly with hand harvesting, which only required permission from the APA. We hired a dive team after fundraising, and these are the results from the years we've been diving now, which include 4, and we're about to launch our 5th. So you can see the dramatic change from the pounds of milfoil harvested from over 900 down to 120 and so forth. Next slide. The first year we had 2 full weeks of harvesting, one early in the season, one late. After that, we decided to switch to more frequent harvesting, but for shorter periods of time. So this shows the total plant harvest by month. And next slide. And this shows the numbers for the year. In 2021, plants were not counted. So dramatic decrease from over 5,000 to 1,500, and last year was just 407 plants. Next slide. And this shows the percentage decrease, again, quite striking and reassuring numbers. Next slide. So these are the actual locations of each plant that was picked up in 2024. And on the next slide, we see 2023 in orange with 2024 in red. And the next slide, 2022, 23, and 24. We've been very successful, largely, as I mentioned, because of the group. We have talented and dedicated people. It's a small group. We work very well together. There's not a lot of egos involved. And perhaps even more importantly, the involvement of the community. Because Moody Pond is used by the community even more than the people who live around the pond, they've been tremendously supportive. And one of the key things in forming Friends of Moody Pond is that it's not a shore owners association, but a community organization. So we have a number of members who don't live around the pond, who pay dues and provide work in our goal of getting rid of the milfoil. Ongoing challenges are continued fundraising. There was a lot of enthusiasm at first, and as is often the case, particularly with the situation improving so much, there's diminished enthusiasm and decreasing dollars. More recently, we've been very successful with grants, and we're not sure how long that's going to go on. So now we're dealing with the issue of what's the most efficacious way to either, if we can't eradicate the milfoil, which is our goal, but probably not achievable, we're looking at maintenance. And we have to balance the cost of the diving, which is approximately $8,000 a week for 3 divers for 40 hours each, with just keeping things under control. Next slide. We can skip over this. I pretty much covered it. This indicates the wide support we've gotten, even though we don't have a lot of summer residents around the pond, living around the pond. There are many people from afar in the area, and they often utilize the pond, including Baker Mountain, which is accessed by around the pond. Next slide. That's our group at one of the ice cream socials, which is one of our big fundraising events, and an opportunity to educate the community, to drum up support. The fellow in the orange-red shirt is the head diver. We've had APIP be present with educational materials, the dive team, music, magic, trying to make it a fun family event for the community, and that's been quite successful. Next slide. Whoop.
I think that might be all we have. Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, there was, okay, an updated version, but that's all right. I think I'll stop there. I apologize again for the technical ineptitude.
We have a question here from Bob, and yeah, thank you, Jay. Thank you. Do you have any volunteers among your membership who would snorkel or dive to do the harvesting?
Just this coming year, the daughter of our president, who's Heidi Kretzer, has become certified as a diver. And she, in fact, we understand, is being employed by Guy Middleton's group on the Upper Saranac Foundation. So she'll probably be working for Guy at the pond this summer. But we haven't had any people diving independently, although that could be done. I think technically you'd have to get permission from the APA to be pulling stuff up from the pond to be certain that you knew what you were doing.
And Jay, how deep is Moody Pond? Do you know?
Okay, yeah, it's 18 feet the deepest. So it's quite shallow, which is the ideal depth for milfoil to grow, between about 2 and 20 feet.
We had a question from William. What organization does the hand harvesting? And that's Upper Saranac Foundation. Brian answered that in the chat, but figured I'd throw it out there. Let me see if there's any other questions. We have a congratulations on success without chemicals. Jay, are you pretty confident, or I should say, is the dive team pretty confident that they'll be able to completely eradicate Eurasian water milfoil from Moody Pond?
That's a matter of debate. As Lee Walrath, who worked with us initially from the APA, said, if anybody says they can eradicate the milfoil entirely, make sure that they commit to doing it at no charge if it comes back. So I personally think that it's possible theoretically, particularly in such a small body of water, but the reality is that it may not be possible. The big question is, how did it get in? Because there are no motorboats in Moody Pond. Most of the boats are either the few people who live around the pond that have a canoe or a kayak or a paddleboard, and then the fishermen who come. So I suspect that it, it, it may have been from bait and water-containing receptacles that fishermen use. Although one of the divers said at places they've actually seen waterfowl take off from lakes that are loaded with milfoil and have it on their legs and feet. So
There's an argument to be made here for waterfowl wash stations, I think. Real quick before I hand it off to Brian, I think it's worth noting, I live in Saranac Lake, so I'm right down the road from this. And, I think Friends of Moody Pond have done a good job of checking off a lot of the boxes that ADK Action mentioned earlier with the community engagement. They have these wonderful little festival type events that they do, and they're very kid friendly. There's ice cream, right? And there's music and there's things like that. And it's really amazing because you have, I think Jay said, about 25 people living around the pond, but I feel like a good portion of the community has kind of shown up to get behind this effort. So it's been really cool to see that.
Yeah, I think we did tick off a number of the things ADK Action mentioned, mostly just organically or by luck. So that's definitely added to our success.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much. If anybody has any more questions for Jay, please type them into the chat. Brian Green is up next. He's going to give a brief overview here of this wonderful story map and tell us a little bit about the Lake Protectors program.
Yeah, so here at APIP, we've worked extensively with Friends of Moody Pond, and I won't say it was all due to luck. It's definitely due to a lot of hard work and effort that they put in, and they've been able to do a few of the key things that we thought, so successful invasive species management. First, they were able to find the species early. So that's what we call early detection. There was a volunteer in our Lake Protectors program who had been trained how to identify this, and they went out and they were the first person who found it. They were then able to work together as a team to move into raising money and getting funds to do what we call rapid response. So hiring a team to go out there and be able to really bring this plant under control to where now most of the people, the only way you see it on the pond is if you're one of the professional divers at the bottom. So while we might never be able to 100% eradicated, it is now essentially functionally eradicated, where it is not having a negative impact on the ecology or people's enjoyment of the lake. So they've done a great job. So last year, Dana Homeland, who worked for the APA as our seasonal AIS assistant, created this story map, and it's a great way of highlighting the story that Jay just told, talking about Friends of Moody Pond, where it is, talking about the story of Margaret finding it first, and highlighting the plant. So this is an interactive website that I put the link in the chat, and we'll share with people afterwards. But you can see a lot of this data, and you can interact with it and zoom in on these maps, and you can show it. But one of the things I wanted to highlight was that it talks about the work that they've done as part of our lake management tracker program, where they have set monitoring points where the Friends of Moody Pond go out every summer and they assess, is the milfoil there, which is a key step when you're doing management to see, okay, are we making progress? Are we removing it? And each year they go out and they do monitoring to see how effective the dive team is. And you can see some of this data and with these kind of cool sliders in there. So you can see this was how much they reported in June of 2021. And then if you slide it over, this is how much of it was in June of 2022. And I'll kind of like skip to the very end. This slider right here shows the first year they started monitoring in 2021. And then this shows last year when they weren't able to find any of it on there. So it's a great success story about showing not just the monitoring, but also the management and the community working together. So this is an online resource that anybody can go and look at and see the great work where they've been able to really reduce and control Eurasian water milfoil. So it shows that through hard work and dedication, it's possible.
Very cool. Brian, did you want to talk about lake protectors for a second, or?
Oh yeah, I'll just give a plug. Every year, we have these two programs running called Lake Protectors and Lake Management Tracker. Lake Protectors is focused on the early detection aspect. We train people, lake associations, members of the public, school kids, how to identify 16 aquatic invasive species. They then adopt a water body where they go out and do a survey at least once between the months of July and September. And then there's our lake management tracker program, which is what I just talked about, where it's for lakes that are doing milfoil management, and they have set monitoring points. They go out to once a year and they do this census to see how effective their management is. Is the milfoil increasing? Is the milfoil hopefully decreasing like it is in Moody Pond? So you can go on our website, find out more about them. We'll have upcoming trainings in June, July, and August this summer.
Great, thanks, Brian. Yeah, and I'll send links out to all this stuff later so you don't have to worry about remembering it. I just kind of want to plant the seed there. So I'm just going to do one last little thing here, and then we'll wrap it up. If everyone can see my screen, we have our APIP Spring Partner Meeting coming up. It's going to be Tuesday, May 20th. If you're not in the Adirondacks, the answer is yes. May 20th is still spring in the Adirondacks, in case you're wondering. So that's going to be at Heaven Hill Farm in person. We will have a virtual option available for that from 10 to noon, and that'll be some updates and things like that. And then we're all going to head over to the Ausable Freshwater Center for a nursery tour. That, of course, will be in person only, and that'll be from about 1 to 2. So that'll be after lunch until about 2 p.m. And we will have more info available soon. This is kind of hot off the presses, but I wanted to get it on everyone's radar. And then lastly, as always, APIP has a lot of outreach materials. They're all completely free. I urge you all to check them out on our website and feel free to order them. You can contact me directly or use the form on our website. We have a couple different brochures here on invasive species, protect your forests and protect your waters. And then we have a nice rack card that's a reminder to only buy firewood or only burn firewood where you buy it. New York State, you're not supposed to bring firewood more than 50 miles from its point of origin. We tell people best practice, just get it wherever you are and buy it there, then burn it there instead of bringing it. Don't risk it. And then we have posters. These are basically the poster version of our two Protect Your Forest and Protect Your Waters brochures. And then last but not least, on the right here, we have our field guide to terrestrial invasive species of the Adirondacks. It covers 28 invasive species. All of them, except for one, are found in the Adirondacks. Spotted lanternfly being the exception, and we're looking out for it. But this is a really handy field guide you can put in your pocket. It goes over how to identify plants, and then it gets into the invasive species and how to identify them. And it also teaches you how to report them if you do see something that you think is an invasive. So very cool guide, and it's totally free, full color. So please contact me or go on our website if you're interested in ordering some. All right, does anyone have any questions that we didn't get to yet? I'm going to take a look in the chat here. A lot of thank yous. If you have a question, you can just come off of mute and ask it, and if not, we'll say goodbye.
I'll just make one more comment. In contrast to Moody Pond, Upper Saranac Lake has been enormously successful in controlling the milfoil. So it's certainly possible with big lakes, and they've done it with hand harvesting as well. Initially, they used some mats, but I think they moved away from that. Trouble with mats is it kills the native vegetation as well as the milfoil.
So we have a question, any contact info for the presenters? If the presenters are okay with it, I can share that in the follow-up email that I send out. That email will come out after the YouTube video is ready and live. So maybe within a day or so, that'll be out. So I can ask the presenters that if they're okay with it. Let me know if you're not, and I can share that contact info in that email. All right, thanks again to all the presenters. We appreciate it.
I have one quick question, Sean.
Oh, sure.
I'll do one thing because I think it's important to highlight, and I think each one of the presenters kind of talked about it, and if they wanted to quickly put their comment on it. But invasive species issues are inherently challenging. They are long-term problems. They are costly problems. They're not fun problems. And, one of the things that I think all three of these people talked about is about the importance of making some fun in this. And, if you looked at the Charlie talking about the excitement of the students with the award, Jay talking about the ice cream social, ADK Action talking about, involving kids and doing this. So I think we need to bring a little bit more fun into some of these things, even when these are hard topics. So I'd love to hear if anybody else has any examples or things that they could talk about how they've brought in an element of fun to their community challenges.
Yeah, Brian, so with ADK Action, I think an example of like what you just talked about, of bringing some fun to a somewhat challenging issue. One of our project areas that we work in is road salt reduction, which road salt it's hard to not to make it positive and fun and engaging. But I think that was the strength of our Don't Be Salty campaign, is that it's, we didn't do the buttoned up approach of, well, we must reduce road salt. We took kind of fun phrase and something that really resonates with people. And we produced a bunch of really cool stickers and fun rat cards and some magnets you can stick on your car. We encourage people to take our pledge for, their own road salt reduction efforts too, to make sure they're not salting their sidewalks too much in front of their own homes. So I think we took an issue that can sometimes be challenging, and because we put such a fun spin on it, and produced materials that were high quality and very engaging, I think that we've moved the needle on public opinion on reducing road salt.
And that all came from us thinking that we had already reached all of the people that were like just already going to be interested in this or hearing the dire effects, or who had already engaged. And we needed to reach a new audience of people that had not reached yet. So we went with fun.
All right. Well, we're after 11:30 now. Why don't we say goodbye to everyone? And feel free to follow up with any questions you might have via email. Okay, thanks
for having
everyone.
us.
Yeah. Great program, Brian and Sean. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. Bye now.
Have a good day, everybody.